Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Author and master energy healer Tyler Watson is today's guest. Tyler will talk about his many books, including The Alignment Effect.
Elite performance coach and creator of the cellular alignment technique, Tyler Watson. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Marc.
So good to have you, Tyler. Tyler, when did you first become interested in enhancing your own performance in life and business? Because no 10-year-old says, I'm going to be a motivational speaker and trainer when I grow up. So when did it first hit you in your own life?
Yeah, for me, I've always been interested in growth and change. My dad's what's called a clinical kinesiologist, and my stepmom's a naturopath. So I grew up always into personal development, mindset, seeing people change in clinic sessions. Yet, so I would say since 2 years old, I always wanted to see change and growth. My dad actually was climbing up a ladder and fell off when I was younger, and he landed on a rebar wire and broke his back. And his generation, he just kept working until he was paralyzed from the waist down. And the doctor said that his chances of walking were pretty much zero. And so he didn't want to admit that and looked for alternative methods and ended up walking again. And so through that, I saw the power of change through my own family. And yet, as a kid, I would always work on his back. So he would have me massage his back, and I saw immediately relief after doing it. So I knew change could happen very quickly, but it kind of became a life obsession of more than beyond the body, but also in finances and health and relationships. So.
Well, there's so much interesting stuff here, with your dad and finding relief. But you mentioned also your stepmom, I think, is a naturopath. So I want people watching to know it's very interesting that in my own life, I was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 16 and a half. I keep getting these gifts from my family from genetics. And then another gift from my mother, I was diagnosed with diabetes probably in my late 40s. But I'm bringing that up because I have a naturopath. And a lot of people poo-poo that, but I have to tell you, I didn't know anything about your family before you just said it. But, leave no stone unturned, because I love that philosophy, because I read your book, which is why I had to have you on the show. But just knowing that you go another direction, not an opposite direction, but another direction, is so important. So what is your process, Tyler, when you work with people on improving their lives?
Yeah, so when it comes to elite performance, there's the old philosophy. So I teach what's called the unstoppable equation, and most people do what's on the top of the equation. So if I was to map this equation out, the U would represent the speed at which someone can attain their goal. So whether it's hitting $100,000 in a month or $1 million in a month, or to have a better relationship with a spouse, or to connect deeper with their children, or not get triggered, or to get rid of a food allergy, or whatever it might be. No matter what it is, the U would represent the speed at which we attain it. And in life, we see some people who will set their mind at something and nail the goal, which seems like as fast as could be. Like there's no way they could do it faster. And then other people, 30, 40 years down the road, and they still haven't hit their goal. And so my question always was, what is the difference? Because I felt like the second person. I was like, let's set a goal, and it never happened. And I was like, well, what, these people writing books and doing all this stuff, what makes them so different? And out of all the things that I read, it was the top of the equation that I thought was the thing, which said to be unstoppable and get that goal as fast as possible, you have to have skills, multiplied that by work and focus. So if you work really hard, you have a very solid focus, and you amplify that by the skills that you master, you'll be able to conquer anything. So that was the philosophy that I started with, was, Jim Rohn, reading his books. And he's just like, if you talk to 10, get 1, talk to 10, get 1, talk to 10 and get better, get 2. And I would talk to 30 and get 0. And I was like, man, I just suck. Like, what is up with me? And so I watched that, and I got really frustrated with that philosophy. So I put in a lot of repetition. I put in the reps, I put in the time, and I still was falling short. And something was off. I was like, there's got to be something missing to this equation, which all the gurus talk about, which is work hard, get better, work hard, get better, keep at it. You'll eventually make it. And I didn't. So I started to look for different methods. And through that, I found that there's an underneath to that equation, which is actually all your skills and all your work and all your focus is divided by what are called allergies and addictions. And those are fight flight responses in the body. So when I was going and trying to at first, hit my $10,000 mark, I think that my first year of as an entrepreneur, it was like 13,000-ish dollars the whole year. And I wanted to, apparently like 10K in a month was a big thing. So I was like, dude, I want that. So I started to focus on it and nothing would work. Everything just sucked. Didn't have the skills. I worked really hard and I tried to have the focus. But no matter what I did, instead of everything I touched turned to gold, it seemed like it turned to dust.
Mhm.
And so I found that actually each of us has our past, based on our past pains, the things that we went through. I watched my mom go through 5 divorces. I watched my dad go through 2. I struggled with porn addictions, video game addictions, depression, suicidal tendencies. Those actually became patterns inside of my body that were known as addictions, just like a drug addiction. And so no matter what I tried to do with my work and focus, I would self-sabotage and do things that weren't ideal. And I'd turn to these non-ideal things and it felt like I didn't have any power over them. And the opposite was true as well. So that's an addiction. An allergy is something that's ideal that you're pushing away. And so if I would try to focus on making $10,000 in a month, it wouldn't happen. It was almost like the closer I tried to get to it, the further it got. And as I figured out this, I was like, wow, I wonder how you can switch these. And so I went through a lot of different techniques, probably about over 500 different ones, and learned that, hey, there's some actual unique ways that you can reprogram the mind and body so that you can change your entire identity and become the person you need to be to let go of those fight flight responses so you can literally obtain your goals in hours or days instead of taking 30, 40 years.
Well, that's incredible because who has 30 or 40 years? But you mentioned some things about skills and it didn't work for you. So something that resonated with me when I wrote the book was a very simple second grade math problem, which is your brain's 2% of your body. What about this other 98%? So we'll get into that more and about your newest book. But you have a tremendous, vast academic, for lack of a better term, educational background. So how has your educational background shaped what you now do professionally?
Yeah, so I started off, and honestly, I'd say most of the education I've gotten has been outside the normal academia. I did go to school. I got my biology pre-med degree, all that stuff. I was going to go study to become a doctor of natural medicine. I was about halfway through that. I studied Ayurvedic medicine, became a Thai yoga therapist, was doing medical Thai massage, northern and southern style, did all sorts of crazy stuff to just learn because that was my fascination. Part of me wanted to become an osteopath, so I didn't know like what route to take. And as I saw my dad as a clinical kinesiologist and my stepmom as the naturopath, they own 2 clinics, and all the stuff that they have to deal with legally and trying to help people, and it just felt like there was so much resistance in helping people that way. And I thought, well, what if I could get somebody the same result, but just through education and transformation through techniques? And I don't even need anything else. And so I thought, well, that's way faster, way simpler, and it's helping the other person take full responsibility. So as a coach, my job is to empower the person to stop being a victim in any area of their life and to help them get their power and choice back. And we can do that through simple processes that helps them take that ownership back. But the education, a lot of it, I've invested almost $800,000 now in personal development, transformational processes, things like that. And Most of it has come through when I get passionate about something and I go hire a coach. I go spend money on learning and really self-developing myself and my family. That's where the education comes, when it's practical and implemental. Like, I can implement it immediately. I'm also very kinesthetic. So I'd say everything that I've learned um, is more hands-on. I think if I ever thought, like, if I ever had to go to hell, it would be like, God's like, "Okay, Tyler, you have to," or like Satan or whatever, he's like, "You gotta sit in this chair and you're gonna be taught for the next eternity in this chair watching PowerPoints." I'd be like, "No," like anything other than that. So the traditional school, yeah, definitely not a fan of, but education, you can get it anywhere, like books and coaches, and it's so much education today, which I love.
Yeah, and it's so true. I was an educator for over 32 years. I don't, and it was public school system, so it was traditional education. But I don't think I was a traditional teacher. But I know what you're saying. I've been in staff development where somebody throws the PowerPoint up, and it's just flavor of the month. And some are great, and some are not so great. But I love the fact that and it is true. The internet has changed things. It's ridiculous. And now with AI, but with books such as your own, people really can improve in a shorter amount of time and more powerfully. So on my show, Tyler, I often talk about the story behind the glory. So what struggles did you have to overcome as you entered the field of, for lack of a better term, motivation and elite coaching?
Man, I would say that's probably the biggest education there, is learning and valuing from our past stories. I love life stories with that's a great name, because each story that we go through becomes like your gold, your treasure. And in the past, I didn't value myself. So even though I went through things, and this happens to all of us, we go through things and we don't really value it. It's just, hey, no big deal. And yet, as we look back and see the lessons that we learned and who we became, that's the gold. And so for me, at first, I didn't think I was anything special. I was like, man, I haven't like went through a hard life. Like, we don't really think that. We're like, I just go through life. This is my life. But looking back, I found that that was the gold and I didn't value it. So some of those gold nuggets for me, the biggest one that I can relate to is when I was 12 years old, and I grew up in a very Christian background, family, God, faith. So everything was all about that and freedom. And I went through at the age of 12. I remember my dad sitting down with me on the couch, and he's like, "Hey, we need to talk," which that always turned out to be not a good thing. So I was like, "Oh crap, what did I do? Like, I'm in trouble. I forgot something." And he says, "Hey, your mom and I are getting a divorce." And it was completely out of the blue. I didn't even know they were arguing. There was no context. And when he spoke that, what I heard emotionally was, "Tyler, it's your fault. And you could have or should have done something different to save this marriage." And so I didn't know how to communicate that at the time. So I internalized it and I took it very personal. So I just put on my smile and pretended that everything was okay. And I started to become a elite performer. So I went out, got straight A's, became the class president, VIP, all this stuff, MVP, and everything that I could do externally to try to fill that void inside. I felt empty. I was super happy during the day, and at night there would be times where I would wonder about different ways to kill myself and wonder if anybody would even care. And that went on from about 12 to 18 years old. So nobody knew other than my black lab, which is the only entity that I felt comfortable communicating with. And so watching that experience and getting it through that, I learned a lot of lessons looking back, which one was, number one, that should not be the norm for any child, any kid, any teenager. And I believe that as leaders, we need to vocalize the importance of communicating, of feeling safe, feeling heard, feeling understood, and really getting to the core of what people have gone through and not just push it aside. I watched my mom go through several, and my parents just didn't have the skill set. They didn't know, they didn't understand. They weren't taught what I've learned. And so going through that, that taught me a lot. I turned to pornography, video games. I turned to things that were empty in order to try to fill that void. Even depression. I didn't know that you could turn to it. But I now look at it and, oh, that's all that was an addiction. And I just chose to go there, whether it was conscious or unconscious. And through that experience, I learned that I don't have to be a victim. I don't have to stay stuck. And I don't have to overwork and overdrive myself to try to prove anything. So as I went through that experience, it really taught me a lot about what it takes to attain goals, what it takes to change, and that we don't have to stay stuck even if it's, been going on for years. You can literally change it in minutes or moments.
Well, that's liquid gold there, and so much. Actually, heartbreaking stuff because the ages of 12 to 18 to have that kind of pressure on you, which is the most important time in the life of a teenager, is very difficult. And the fact that you came out at the other end is so inspiring. But many of us know this kind of feeds into alignment because the average person knows about wheel alignment. That's about it. So for a car, but for humans, walk us through your definition and philosophy behind this alignment.
Yeah. Okay. So let me share a little context to this because it's kind of weird and kind of crazy, but it works. So about 5 years ago, my wife actually had a gluten allergy, and I became really fixated on, okay, what causes allergies in the body, like food allergies.
Mhm.
And I did all these other processes and techniques, and they'd work on other people, but they wouldn't work on my wife. So I was like, it'd work for a day or two, and then it'd come back. And as I kept studying, I just had this download one night, and I never get a dream or anything like very intelligent. I just am like, let's keep grinding, we'll figure it out. But one day, I believe God was listening, and or I was listening finally, and I got this inspiration in the middle of the night that the only reason that Emily is my wife, that she would struggle with a gluten allergy is if some cell in her body is literally having an allergic response to that gluten, and simultaneously an addicted response to the symptoms that gluten provides. So I thought, interesting. So the only reason a symptom would occur is if some cell in the body is allergic or addicted. And if you could get into a state of alignment, which means you eliminate allergies and addictions, pushes and pulls, fight, flight responses, then you can pre-program or reprogram the body to create what you want. And I thought, interesting. So how do you do it? And then I pulled together all these different techniques and created what's now called the cellular alignment technique. And so I did this technique, took about an hour and a half on her. And the first thing she said was, I want toast. And I was like, And she's fully conscious. It's not like hypnosis or anything like that.
Right.
And I did this process. And so she was able to eat gluten without any responses, 8 years of it going on. So we did it on a bunch of food stuff. And then I thought, well, if the philosophy is everything has a vibrational frequency, everything's energy. So if I want to have more money in my bank account, that too has its own vibrational state and frequency. So I started to do it on money. And I did it on, and it's very word based. So I did it on, I have people reach out to me who pay in full for my services that I didn't market to.
Mhm.
And within 24 hours, I had about 3 or 4 people reach out to me on weird platforms that I never looked at, like LinkedIn and stuff.
Right.
And it turned into like $8,000 in sales.
Right.
And I was like, dude, is this a placebo? Keep it coming. Like, this is awesome. And then I tried it on other people. And I saw a chiropractor double his income within 30 days without changing anything externally. I saw other coaches literally have like flocks of people just start coming to them simply by reprogramming how their body functions. And so then I thought, well, if it works on money and some food stuff, what about relationships?
Mhm.
And so then we tried it on that. And I had a mom who, her daughter was 41 years old, and over those years, she had never felt like her daughter cared about her. And she was just really depressed. Like, man, I feel like I just, I've given everything to my daughter, and I don't feel any gratitude. And so she aligned, did this process, and within about 2 days, the first time in her life, got a gratitude letter from her daughter. And she was just like crying. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this is like the most important thing to me." And so I was like, "Holy cow, what about like with things that are incurable?"
Mhm.
And so I had a guy who had a cardiac arrest. And for 5 years, his symptoms, if he walked and looked left or right, he'd fall over. So his whole equilibrium was messed up. He had to wear sunglasses and earplugs, and he could only function about 4 hours a day. So he basically was a high achieving entrepreneur and lost everything. And I was like, "Well," and he's like, "I've tried everything. My wife's a master practitioner. We've tried all the medical stuff, neuroscience, all this stuff." I was like, "Well, my theory is the only reason you'd struggle is if some part of your body's addicted or allergic, period. If you align it, it should shift." So I didn't really know, but I was still testing out this philosophy.
Mhm.
So we did it. And sure enough, a week later, he calls me in tears and he says, "Tyler, you're not going to believe this, but I'm not wearing my sunglasses anymore. No more earplugs. I can walk and look left and right and I don't fall over. I'm functioning at least 8 hours a day."
Mm.
And I was like, dang. And that's when it hit me. I got to get this to the world.
Right.
So it's a simple process. We teach the full version, we teach the basic version. I do 3-day virtual retreats or online events where people can get the experience of it. And it comes down to different pinpointing the fight flight responses, tapping on that area to lock that in to keep the response from actually happening, and then aligning, which is tapping on the forehead going down to the base of the neck at
Mhm.
C7, doing that 3 times in a row, breathing into the nose, out to the mouth, and then panting while tapping and then smiling.
Right.
So it's a series of simple processes, but when done strategically, and you do it on every part of the response, you can literally see changes within minutes or hours instead of taking years. So that's kind of it. And the reason it works is because the first thing to go is your breath in a fight flight response.
Mhm.
And what we're doing is we're creating micro traumas along the body through the tapping process. And the body can only pick up on so many different signals. So it's like having this own fight flight response towards the fight flight response. And you literally override it. And then through that series of processes, it literally just changes it completely. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Everything that Tyler just mentioned is, of course, am I holding this up right? In this
Yeah.
book. So, in closing, Tyler, tell us how we can get this book into the hands of the viewers.
Yeah. So simple place. I think you can drop the link here, but alignmenteffect.com will take you right to it. You can get it on Amazon, but if you go alignmenteffect.com, I have an Audible version there and a PDF version, and we ship it to you. So I always like the Audible version and read along, and I read it, so I get to like expand on it. It's super fun. So yeah, alignmenteffect.com, and then you can start learning.
Excellent. We'll definitely pop that in there. Let me first say to the viewers, don't forget to watch us on E360 TV, available on Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. EST, available on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire. Remember to follow us on social media. Life Stories with Marc Hoberman is on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and of course our YouTube channel. So don't forget to subscribe. Tyler Watson, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.